Well, hello again, Lighthouse. Hey, I am here. This is a very special. Please remove your shoes. You're on holy ground.
Oh,
One of my best friends of my whole life, and just a true brother in ministry. This is Jack Wieland, and Jack. So when we do these conversations, we like to talk theology. And as I was thinking, like, what would the first conversation with you be? And I think it's a theology of friendship, like how important friendship is in theology, because and I think this is true of you too. As I have grown in theological understanding of the world, it's been some study, and you got to dig in, and you got to do the study, and you got to read the books, and you got to take the class, and you got to do all that. But then it's been in the context of friendship, and largely over my professional life, friendship with you, that we've been able to bounce stuff off each other, and every once in a while sound like a heretic and have the other one go,
yeah,
you know?
yeah. A
So
little too
anyway,
far. Yeah,
that's right. We found the edge, brother.
that's exactly
So
right.
anyway, tell us, tell all the people of internet land your situation. You're a pastor in Missouri.
That's right. A little town called Skidmore, Missouri. We're in a small town. It was actually kind of neat. I've pastored churches between 100 and 140 for a handful of years. We're actually in a church of about 55 or so, 55 or 60 right now. The reason it is because we've come back to my wife's home church. So this church, because of their faithfulness to God, took a 3-year-old little girl that used to get poured in, dropped off at nursery school, and then raised her up to be this amazing godly woman and just the love of my life. And then when this church has needed a pastor that will come for whatever they're able to give and love the community, I just absolutely feel like this is like a big picture thing that God is put in motion for our lives. Like, I just feel like being here is God's providence. And so I'm really super excited. Like I said, I love the small church. I love the rural church. The question comes down to is this church has a wonderful Bible tradition. They hold strongly to the Word of God, the authoritative, inspired Word of God for 100 years. So I'm excited to be in a church that's so doctrinally sound. But yet, even with what the culture's doing, we're finding ourselves sliding a little bit. And so, the question is does theology matter? And it absolutely does. What you believe about right belief about God is absolutely core.
Yeah, it really is. I actually was just I just listened to a podcast, and then inspired me to buy a book, and I didn't enjoy the book as much as I hoped, so I won't say who wrote it, but because it's a guy I usually really like. But it was just the idea of the importance of the intellectual life in a believer, and how we can have, because we have a relationship with God, we can fall victim to thinking that it is mostly emotional. Where really I think about this with academia and the intellectual life, and I also think about it in the arts. I how much I love music and to play the guitar and whatever, and I think, man, for just thousands of years, the best scholars and the best artists were in the church. Those were the patrons were.
Yeah.
That's where, and it was like, of course, we all know stories of corruption and how it was misused and all of that. But yeah, like, local church should not give up on intellectual pursuits or artistic pursuits.
Yeah, there was a time where, so one of the things you said, especially talking about artistry, great work is always done out of love. And so one of the things that is beautiful is, as we love God well, it's going to drive us to intellectual pursuit, because is the personal part of relationship with God beautiful and wonderful? The intimacy, the relational pieces, yes, absolutely. The trouble is our emotional process can be deceitful because we have a sin nature. So there comes a time where our proper theological understanding of who God is has to override our emotion. And so that's the part where if we're well ordered and well thought out, and we've done our due diligence in regards to pursuing the Lord intellectually, it helps us to not be kind of such an emotional mess. Because, I see certain things, I see injustice in the world, and I get so angry and upset, and I see what happens in the culture, and I get real frustrated and discouraged. But all of that has to be brought into right submission with God. And so even as I have passion for those things, and even as I have a desire for, Christ to rule and reign in not only my heart, but in our hearts, at a macro level, I have to understand that, there's some people that are going to respond and some people who aren't. And so at the end of the day, God is calling me. I've been a Christian since I was 15 years old. So I'm looking down the barrel of 35 years of walking with Jesus. And at this point in my life, it's ironic because what I need to do now, after 35 years of trying to walk in faithfulness to Jesus, is just go deeper with Jesus. I need to study, I need to read, and I need to have people in my life. I remember there was a time, and I don't know if I have a friend named Grant, who is one of the most well-spoken, well-thought-out people, invested in their education. And it's kind of fun because there was a time where, you weren't quite educationally, as far as letters behind your name, where you wanted to be, but now you are. And it was exciting to see how dedicated you were to the Word and to the study of resources that give us a deeper understanding of the Word. I remember I used to go, Grant, how are you reading this much? And he goes, man, it's like guerrilla study. You're standing in the kitchen with a book in one hand, cooking for the kids, with your other hand.
Yeah.
Telling, Zach, stop hitting his sister, and it was just an encouragement to me to go, man, I got to pick my game up, because people I love are picking their games up.
Well, and it's also just, and we talked about this. I know you saw Megan and I talking. We talked about man, I just really care about what's true, and not me personally. I'm just one of those people. No, I think humans care about that. I don't want to spend my life. I don't want to waste my time. I don't want to waste my life, and I certainly don't want to stand in front of people and say things that I think will sound good, but I'm not sure of. Might not be true. And also just that idea of being a student instead of being one of the people who just says, well, this is the camp I come from, and so I'm right, we're right, we feel great about it. Right. But I've really found reading and just being in study in general, not just reading, but being in conversation with people and not just picking brains, but just kind of going, hey, tell me everything you know about this. And I'm not going to be thinking, because naturally, the natural Grant is very much as you're talking, I'm forming an argument, right? I just love to fight. I love to argue. But more and more just trying to be mature enough to say, look, man, if this guy sees the world differently than I do, let's not pretend I have all the answers. Yep. Christ has all the answers. And if this guy knows Jesus, let's hear what he has to say. So I want to talk about how friendship gets involved in that too, because you and I have, I would say, a deep theologically centered friendship. And yet 2/3 of the time we're talking about dumb stuff.
Yeah.
we're talking about a lot of boxing.
Sure. Yeah. Well, and what's really cool about it, so the bottom, and we connect on some different levels, both from Southern California. We both grew up loving baseball. I can't tell you how many times over the course of our friendship that I'll call, and the first words out of my mouth are, can you believe what the Angels are doing? And so I'm not calling you to be like, dude, let's extol the deep mysteries of the faith. It's dude, why can't we why can't we pay our power hitting third baseman, keep him? Let's let him go to free agency, he's hitting 40 home runs a year. So all of that to say,
but Troy Gloss was a juicer. Let's be honest.
Well, anyway, that's a whole different argument. About,
that is a different podcast.
If the ends justify the means or not, that's a different podcast. But if I don't know,
yeah, that's right.
But I think at the end of the day, so this is kind of how I've been thinking about truth lately. So I'm trying in this moment in my life, I'm trying to think of heaven a lot more. And I'm trying to think about what heaven's going to be like. And I'm trying to prioritize in a way where I'm going, man, heaven is for real. Our eternal life, I believe, in Christ starts as soon as we make a decision for faith. And very humbly, I expect to have conversations with these things with Jesus in eternity. And I hope that when we get to sit down and talk, that Jesus doesn't go like he did with the disciples. And by the way, all grace and mercy there by the grace of God go I, when he has to go, are you still so dull? Like, I want to not be dull. I want to be so in love with Jesus that I'm going, man, what is true and right about not only who God is, but how he made the world to function. I want to understand as much of that as I possibly can. And if eternity with God is going to be as wonderful and beautiful as I absolutely know it's going to be, I want to make sure I'm doing my due diligence and the hard work that I can in the now. And I want to make the most of this life, and I want to invest this life as eternally focused as I possibly could be, because the decisions we make in this life, I always feel guilty about being like, well, I'm doing this to get a reward in heaven. You know what? God has no problem rewarding, so we should have no problem doing smart, good things that earn a reward. And so my hope and my heart is, I always think about it this way. Scripture tells us that we're predestined to be conformed to the image of Christ. So I want to be as much like Jesus in this life as I can be. So when I get to eternity, I'd hate to get to eternity and be transformed to the image of Christ and not even recognize who I was. Being like, I was so dastardly that I don't even recognize who I am now. Yeah. My hope and my heart is as I live with Jesus, I become like him. And so back to friendship, what's so beautiful is when you have people that also love Jesus deeply and want to know what truth is, it causes you to be closer to Jesus. And so I want to have close friends that have right belief in God, but as they're living as the hands and feet of Jesus, it just spurs me on to being the hands and feet of Jesus as well. So that's from the friendship standpoint. We have to be very careful, because I believe right belief, some people have right belief and they kind of sit on their laurels and go, I have right belief. And it's like, no, right belief has to prosper and spur on right action. And so we want to have right belief and right action. And that's where I think we're hitting on all cylinders.
Yeah. And, I think for me, like, God has really, really blessed me with, the whole, like, Paul, Barnabas, Timothy model. Like, you need mentors like Paul was to Timothy. You need Barnabases that are your buddies that are encouraging you, like Paul had with Barnabas. And then you need mentor, or you need people that you're discipling, like Paul discipled Timothy. And I've had really good mentors that I just look at and I go, man, I want to be like them when I grow up. And by the way, something you said earlier bothers me. I'm not sure we're going to be friends for much longer. I don't think I have peers that are 50. So
ouch.
You might.
Hashtag Grant Burn. That was well done by you.
I don't know. That might mean I'm close, and I just
that's a rough neighborhood.
But man, to have. So I love relationships with mentors, and I love relationships with students. But to have people that you can horse around with. And that there's commonality in this life, and to go, oh, I don't have to be theologically right, Grant, over here, and then feel bad about also wanting to spit seeds at a game, or to talk a little punk rock, or to just talk about how fun and difficult it is to be a dad or a husband or whatever. Like, to have, and somehow, like, that whole, like, truth is more caught than taught thing. See in my friends, and you and I have also had that piece where we've been pastors, we've been in ministry, and so when I've seen it, like, theological truth work out in people that I have commonality with in other places, it's just more profound. Like I think like if I was going to write a paper on a theological topic, I would refer mostly to books and speakers. But if I'm thinking about how do I live like I'm supposed to live, I'm just thinking about people. I'm just thinking about, well, what would Dave do? He's a mentor. Well, what would Jack do? Like I've seen it come out of you. And so I'm thinking, when I'm thinking about how to live this stuff, which is absolutely, as you say, it's just every bit as theologically important as what you think in your brain is how you live. And mostly I'm thinking about people I've seen live it and people I've had jokes with, and like just that the enjoyment of a friend is that, like, I don't know. Here, talk about this. I want to give you a chance to talk about Ecclesiastes and chords, but that whole chord of three strands, like this idea of like all I need is God.
There was
but that's not how we're created. We're not supposed to only have God. We're supposed to have that third strand, that like friends as well.
Okay. Well, let me. Okay, so chord of three strands is not easily broken. So, Ecclesiastes talks about the beautiful idea of partnership. And so, one of the things that we're in trouble with as Americans is we've caught this fierce individuality as one of our core values as Americans. It's like, nobody tells me what to do. It's like, why was the Lone Ranger so important, and why was he even called the Lone Ranger? This is crazy. Tonto had his back every step of the way. Like, this is crazy. Why would we, why do we look at Superman and go, man, that guy's the best superhero? And he had the super friends. So the idea of this idea that, we got to be all things to all people, and men, actually, as men, we fall into this lie that you're supposed to be completely self-sufficient and never ask for help. Like, and if you ask for help, it better be a dad or a brother, or it better be somebody super close to you, because you don't ever want anybody to know that you have lack or that you're insufficient. And it's like, holy smokes, I do not see that present in the scriptures in any way, shape, or form. The Apostle Paul, who, in my heart and my theology, I can't help but go, Jesus, and then one step down is the Apostle Paul, and then all of the rest of us. Like, I have to be careful that I don't become an idolater about Paul. He was never alone. He was never by himself doing ministry. He always had partners. And so the bottom line, and even as you're talking about friendship and joy, if the joy of the Lord is our strength, man, we got to be able to have fun, not only with God, by the way, who has an incredible sense of humor, but we have to also just be able to have fun with one another, because the bottom line is, if we're trying to live this monastic lifestyle where we're separatists and we're completely set apart and holy to the Lord, but that does no earthly good to anybody around, we're out of balance. That's why there's a few that might have that call on their life.
Well, most monastics have community. Like,
that's exactly right. That's exactly right. But still, but people have that mindset of like, oh, set apart. And it's like, man, you know what? We do want to be a holy people, a peculiar people, but we also want to be a people that are in relationship with a group of people, and we want to reach out. So I was once part of a church. They hadn't done pastoral evaluations in a long time, 25 years. So when they hired me, they said, we're going to give you evaluations. And on my first evaluation, they said, can you be less funny? And I said, oh my goodness. I go, was I irreverent?
You think I'm funny?
I go, they like me. They really like me. So no, the irony was this, though, is I was like, oh my gosh, did I say something inappropriate from the pulpit? And they go, oh, no, you're not inappropriate. They go, we would just like you to be less funny. And I took a step back from that, and I went, oh, you think you have to suffer in church because if you're having fun and you have joy and you make friends and you are loving it, you feel like you're not doing church right.
Well, and you know, and this won't apply to everybody listening, but I do think, you know, there is something that is a terrible temptation for a pastor to present ourselves as the holy man, to present ourselves as the one who just came down the mountain with the scroll and thus said the pastor, so you better not disagree. And I'm somber and serious. And look, I mean, that's an easy trap to step in, but it'll take your leg clean off. And man, I want out of that power as soon as possible. First of all, I am honest about who I am. I do not have it all figured out. And at the same time, like, I understand the role of leader. Like, I'm fine leading, but to lead from the ivory tower instead of from among the people and you know, that whole thing. I don't know if you've ever been playing golf and then somebody finds out halfway through that you're a pastor and they spend the whole rest of the time apologizing that they said a curse word in the, you know, first couple holes. And you're like, gosh, man, we want real people who are really pursuing Jesus. And I think that gets in the way of friendships, not just with pastors, but with any kind of professional, and maybe with everything. Maybe, you know, maybe I think it's really hard for moms too, where they go to the park with the kids and they go, oh my gosh, I have to be the best version of this. I have to be the one who has it all figured out. So when we hang out with other pastors and we have a really sweet group of pastors here in Seaside. I feel very lucky to have these guys as friends, but I've been in rooms where you go, this is all posture.
Yep.
Nobody's trying to be real at all. And nobody thinks armpits are funny in this room at all. And I don't know that I'm going to be able to understand theology from somebody who doesn't.
Yeah. I always think about, you know, you once told me a story about Dave, who was a mentor and an encourager.
Yep.
And I remember there was a time where you and Dave were at a conference or something with a group of pastors, and one of the guys had his doctorate, so he introduced himself as Dr. Johnson or whatever. And Dave just goes, "Oh, hey, hi, I'm Dave." And it's like,
who also has a doctorate.
Who also has a doctorate. It's like,
who is the smartest guy? Who is the smartest guy in every room he's ever been in? And you come at that guy like, I'm Dr. So-and-so. And he goes, hi, I'm Dave. And you go, you don't know what you're dealing with, man.
That's exactly right. It's like, it's a trap. He's going to totally steal you.
But he wouldn't, because he's loving. And that's right. The thing.
And so that's what's so cool about Jesus. And that's what's so cool about Dave.
Yeah.
And that's what's so cool about what you've gleaned from Dave. Mm-hmm. And what's really cool in a very selfish way is what I've gotten to glean from you because of our friendship, but because of your friendship with Dave.
That's right.
So I've gotten to be the guy who, there's been times where I've been able to walk in the room and be like, hey, I'll throw down my credentials. And it's fun because when the temptation to do that and make much of myself is there's this voice, Grant's voice is in the back of my head going, dude, nobody cares.
That's right. So I'm like, show them. Don't tell them, show them. Which does, again, it's like, this is what godly friends sharpening each other. You know, is it Psalm 133 that's like, oh, how sweet it is when brothers dwell in unity. It's like oil dripping off of Aaron's beard. And I just think we are not suited to learn theology by ourselves. It has to be, it is not has to be, it is normatively as we process ideas, but don't trust just our brain, but say, hey, can I run this by you? And if, and it's so helpful if that's in the context, not just of a scholastic relationship, but of just being friends.
So I think about the blessing. So I feel like I'm I know I'm supposed to put off false humility. So I feel like I'm a pretty gifted preacher. I feel like I'm a pretty gifted preacher. It's fun that God went ahead and goes, yeah, you do have some gifts that I gave you to do this, and I called you to do it. But there's 10 guys in your life that are better than you that you love. And so I've gotten to sit under guys at in my undergraduate degree, my Bible college degree from Ozark Christian College was unbelievable. Some of the godly men that got to pour into my life were wonderful, gifted people. Seminary, same thing. Wonderful, gifted people poured into my life. Incredibly knowledgeable about the word. But you can speak into my life and call me on my stuff where they can't.
Likewise,
so and it's interesting because if they came to me and said, hey, you're being a jerk, I might go, well, what do you know? Or you don't know me that well. Or,
I'm rubber, you're glue.
Yeah, that's right. But the irony is, because of who you've been in my life and the way you've lived your life, the integrity that you've lived your life, in the pursuit I've seen of you loving Jesus, and then the way you love your wife and kids, when you go, hey, Jack, you're being a jerk, I can't just slap that off. I got to go, okay, let's take a look at myself. Where's my heart? Where's my mind? And so that's one of the parts where, to be honest, we all can't, it takes a very wise person to allow anybody to rebuke us and then to give it a fair hearing. But a lot of times we can only really hear things from certain people, and having somebody who is theologically sound and isn't just giving it lip service, who's really living it out. That is what's so convicting to me, is in the times where you've had to go, man, you need to think about this in a different way. I'm excited because I can go, man, I know that you care for me and love me in such a way where there is no hint of personal agenda. There's no hint of you trying to elevate yourself. You're going, dude, I just care about you, and I want to see you be the best version of what Jesus has for you. You can be. And so that's why it's so incredibly important and such a blessing. So,
well, and in this case, indeed, I am rubber and you are glue. What you say comes to me and bounces off of me and sticks to you. Yeah, I mean, you have that relationship in my life too. And I think it's so special where with a mentor, I don't have that relationship in their life. They have it in mine.
Yeah.
And with a student, I have students in my class at Trinity. They come to me and say, hey, I think you need to adjust your thinking. And I go, why did you not turn in your homework? Like, I'm happy to be sharpened. Truth comes from all over, but my heart is not particularly open to people that I'm just mentoring. Where when you have that brother, it's a mutual thing. And again, God's blessed me with 2 or 3 people in my life like that, that it is such a beautiful thing where I was just trying to think, like, you and I have known each other a long time, like since the Village Church of Irvine is like, I don't even know what year,
20. So we're looking down the barrel.
We got married in 96. So 97, something like that.
Yeah. No, well, 21 years is where we're at. So we showed up at VCI in the end of 99.
Okay, cool. So that's a long time, and we've gone from like very different stations and walked through life together. I don't know that either one of us have really ever made a big decision without calling the other one.
Yeah, it's been
there's been a lot of big decisions, career moves and geographic moves and changes in, I don't know if changes in theological understanding, but growing in theological understanding. I don't know that I've ever, like, there's a very short list of people that I go, I'm not final on this decision until I get an hour with Jack.
Yep. So in the very best of times, I call you. Yeah. And in the very worst of times, I call you.
That's right.
And so, and everything in between. And so that's the part where, one of the things we always want to be as men seen as competent. We always want to be seen as acceptable. we're all just longing for acceptance. And, I sometimes have told people in my pulpit, if you knew everything there was to know about me, I probably wouldn't get to be the pastor here anymore. If you knew every deep, dark utterance of my heart, like you couldn't follow me after that. And there's a reason. And by the way, if I knew every person's deepest, darkest, how could we have relationship? But at the end of the day, people don't realize that pastors, what's the statistic? 70% of pastors deal with depression. A lot of pastors feel like they have no close friends. You know what I've been blessed with in 20 years of ministry coming up on, I've been blessed with a few really close friends from those times. But you've always been a safe place, and you've always been a place where I can be myself, and that I'm not going to get ridiculed for, and I'm not going to get slammed, and I'm accepted and encouraged. And so that's the part, like, when it gets real, like, the world often tells, and by the way, I went through a hard time and went to a pastor who had 57 years of experience in the ministry, and his counsel through that hard time was, you can't ever let anyone see what you're going through, and if you're having a hard time, you can't ever show that to someone. And I'm going, oh my gosh, that is the opposite of what I see in who Jesus was. And this is a wonderful, godly man, but that advice came out of hurt and lot of difficulty. And so that's the part where it's like, there is a time and a place to not tell everything that you know or express every feeling you have, but there better be people in your life that you can be 100% yourself with. And
and I feel like this is going so long, people aren't going to hang in with us, but we might have to shove it into two. But to me, there's an error on either side. You either are an open, bleeding heart, and everybody you pass in the hall, how you doing? And you're like, well, I'm really struggling with depression right now. And they don't have the capacity for it. And that's a mistake. And on the other hand, you can have nobody, like you say, who's a safe place, who you can say, there's nothing I could do that I couldn't call you and say, hey, how quick can you get to Tijuana? Bring $100, like
and a shovel.
That's right. And so there, like, you don't need a million friends that are closer than a brother, but you do need a couple. And I think you can err profoundly on both. And I feel bad for your friend who said you can't ever show anybody anything, because you're right, that totally came from hurt. He probably had experience, and let's be honest, there ain't no church like church hurt. And
that's right.
And he there's a good chance he had been honest with somebody and got hammered for it and was rejected and not accepted and lost some friends or whatever. And so you do have to be wise about who you let in, and you can see why you get burned a couple times and you go, that's it, I am a rock, I am an island. That's but the guy who wrote that was in a band, by the way.
He had some
Paul Simon
also
don't go with him.
He had some issues too. And
well,
so you gotta also
true. Hey, you will not besmirch the name of Paul Simon in my presence.
That's right. That's my bad.
But that it's unwise to be too open with everyone, but it is really unwise to not be open, starting with your spouse and then extending out to a couple of friends or brothers or sisters.
So I told my kids, I taught, we're in a society where social media wise, I can have 1,000 friends on Facebook. And, it's interesting. Like, I've been using social media as a teaching format and just putting things out, hoping that God can somehow use it for the kingdom. And I've been reached out to by 100 people that have just come across teaching and videos and go, hey, I was blessed by that, I'll reach out and be a friend. And the irony is there's people on my Facebook friends that I don't even know really who they are, And so the way I talk to my boys about it is, and I'll even say, I go, look, we're friends with everybody. Like, we want to be friendly, and we want to be supportive and encouraging, and we just want to be like Jesus to as many people as we can, because we want our friendliness and the way that we love and care for people to draw people to Jesus so they can be saved. But that doesn't mean that we're close friends with everybody. And so we've been talking a lot about, some of our kids aren't getting the benefit and the blessing of, when I was a kid, I used to go home after school and I used to play in the street or go to the boys club for hours after school and play. So I have 3 or 4 friends from growing up that man, they are as close to my heart, and as, you know, would do anything for me as you could imagine. And as the cultures move forward, that's just less and less present in our young people's lives. And so where that used to happen by default, I think we're at a point now where we have to be intentional to go, who are going to be my tribe? Who are going to be my, you know, my bros? Who are going to be, we're in it for through thick and thin, and no matter what, I got your back. And, you know, so I think for young Christians, I think that you have to be wise to go, man, those closest people to me, I want them to be people who not only know and love Jesus, but really have back to theology, a proper understanding of orthodoxy. And then they're the ones encouraging me to grow my faithfulness and obedience to Jesus. And we're walking in obedience together. It's not going to happen by accident. There has to be a point where the Zachs and the Gabriels go, man, I'm going to go make sure that my closest, you know, my tribe are people that are solid theologically.
That's right.
So
that's great, dude. We'll make that the last word for sake of time, but come back and do it again soon.
Hey, and love you very much.
I love you too, brother. And let's think of some topics that'd be fun to kick around. But awesome. Like one of the most wonderful things about modern technology is that our friendship has been able to endure a lot of distance and over a lot of years. And I do love you, and I appreciate you. And
can I say something before we cut off?
Yeah, I can edit it if I don't like it. So sure.
Good. I bet you're gonna like it. So Seaside, your pastor, or Lighthouse, your pastor has done more in my life than anybody else, or as much as one other guy that was right there to spur me on to love and follow Jesus as much as anybody else. And so I just want to encourage you that this is a godly man who has been faithful to the Lord, and this is a man who is worthy of being a leader, and that we should all be encouraged by and follow. So Lord bless you guys. It's been wonderful to be with you.
I appreciate that. Hey, are you putting this up on your church's website or something?
I wasn't. Give me the finished product, and I would love to.
Okay, cool. That'd be awesome. Skidmore, we're praying for you. We look forward to seeing you sometime. And dude, I love you. And you know, when you say there's me and one other guy, just to be mentioned in the same sentence as Dennis Rodman as influence in your life.
Dennis is the best.
Nobody gets boards like Dennis. All right.
I just want to be able to rebound like Dennis. See ya.
You and me both.